of breakdown would be with that which lies west of 93 and that which lies east of 93. And so if you add up the W1 list of land uses and the E1 list of land uses, you'll actually get more than what shows on the first page, because this establishes, if we agree on this framework, this will establish the overall maximum, and then this will establish the maximums on each side of the highway. And then the most detailed breaks down into a series of parcels. The ones that look sort of yellow-green on the left side, they look more yellow on my computer, but in the text document, for example, I've tried to anticipate a few things, such as, since those are perimeter lots abutting neighborhood residential, I'm saying, at least for beginning discussion, that they ought to stay residential. And that if you're going to have an office in any of those lots, for example, it would only be a home occupation office. So, food for thought. You know, you'll think of other things, lots of other things that I haven't thought of, but I've made placeholders for things like this so we can sort of walk around the site and the plan and figure out what makes sense. One of the requirements is to submit some traffic information. Since the project is likely a 30 to 40 year project, I don't think it's fair or reasonable to do any traffic analysis beyond what the PUD says, and that says tell us how much it's going to generate and where is it going to go, and then identify intersections that we think, or locations that we think we're going to need to study or add improvements. So that's what those two sheets are. This is the cover of the written portion of the master plan, document 2. The list of allowable uses is straight out of the PUD.
Sorry. Must be my wife.
Haven't heard that one before.
There we go.
The PDF that you got this afternoon, by the way, still has truck terminal in it as allowed use. We're not proposing a truck terminal, but this does not. This is an important point. If you look at your copy of the master plan and then these two copies of the master plan, the written part of the master plan, presently I'm proposing to say that from a master plan perspective, these three plans are all the same. Even though if you look at them, they're obviously somewhat different. So by putting this in, I'm proposing that there's quite a bit of flexibility at the master plan level, and it's at the subdivision and site plan levels that things will get more specific. And at those levels, you know, actual traffic analysis have to be done as well. And little things like, this is the same image left and right. Let's say the master plan showed the building that looks like an E down by the building that's sort of like a big L. I'm saying it's not a problem for that to move to a different location, and for where it used to be filled in with other similar mixed-use buildings. So it's at bottom, basically what you're approving, if we get to that stage with this process, is an overall list of what could happen here, and you're also approving the beginning of a process of lots and lots of meetings with your board to get more specific with site plans and subdivision plans.
Keep the board busy for the next 20 years.
It might. And that's it for me projecting to you. I'd really like to hear from you and like anybody else, Mr. Chairman, as you mentioned. There's a lot of information in the package you just received this afternoon. You're gonna have, I'd like you to be able to get your arms around it. I don't know if if any of you have had any chance to think of anything already, but I'm here to help if I can.
Just we know that this is as we progress. We're going to provide more and more information as you're going to provide us with more information, and we're going to need time in between each meeting to digest what we're all talking about. So what you have today is you know, a limited book that's going to expand, and we're going to fill in the blanks as we move along, and people are going to digest it as we move along, and we're going to refine it as we move along. What we're trying to do is say, here's the basic framework, the skeleton, if you might, as to what this process could be, and let's try to work out this framework in these meetings, digest it, and then come back, and then do it again and again until we feel that we're at a point where we can finally take it forward. And it is a process, but like this you've just received, and you need to digest it, and then we need to talk about it. So this is why we're here, and this is while the process starts.
Yes.
Just a quick comment, Art, for the board members and the public. As Rick mentioned, we did just receive these this afternoon. I will be on Friday when I return after the holiday uploading these to the town's website, so they will be available for people to take a look at on the town's website as well.
Yes, that was going to be my, is how do we get this out to the public as, quickly as possible? Because this is our first look at it, so it's, we got a lot to digest. That's my feeling. I had a lot to digest with the charrette, but a lot of that was getting input from people and everything, and quite a wide range of ideas and everything. But I think even if we have some hard copies available in town hall would be good for, because not everyone has a computer.
Yep. Certainly make those
Or
available.
some here, some in the library also, that people could look at.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just from, take my planning board hat off, so from the town council level, one thing that we will be, I would be looking for as the ex officio from the town council is something that, I've mentioned multiple times, and that I would urge the applicant to get together with our life safety people, whether that be our, with staff, so with our fire department, with our police department, so that we can get an understanding of what will be required to support this, how we'll work in concert to make that happen. And I'll leave it to George to comment for the school board side.
No, and I think that's exactly what the school board's going to need as well. As far as build-outs, if you're looking at affordable housing, what the impact to the school system is going to be, how we're going to handle that. As well as, John points out, we've got the same situations. If you've got a condensed neighborhood, I'm going to be looking for things as bus stops. How am I going to move those kids to a school safely?
Certainly.
It would be great if we could look at things, and this I'll put my plug in now, bike lanes, those types of things, so I can get kids on bicycles getting to where they need to go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else, Tim?
No, I think at this point, as Rick and Mike had mentioned, this really is basically a skeleton at this point. It's a basic framework. There aren't a lot of details in any of the materials that have been submitted at this point. There's a lot of things that are required by the ordinance that are going to need to be plugged in over the course of the series of meetings that are going to take place here. I'm relatively confident that the board will provide the appropriate input as well as the public, so that we come up with something when we get to a public hearing that will really spell out how this is going to be developed in the future.
Andre?
And I think a lot of those points have already been mentioned, but if there's any point at which the citizens should be engaged in, it should be on this point, the master plan. Much like a community master plan, what goes into it dictates, it sets the blueprint of what you're going to see in the future. So if your input in this stage of the game, as well as the input that we received from the design charrettes, the master plan is the key element of that. So later on, when Mr. Kettenbach and his staff starts to present site plan, it's going to be based on this master plan. It's going to be based on the input they received.
This is what sets the tone. This is,
That's correct.
as when we do the master plan for the entire town.
Correct.
It's, a lot of brainstorming at first, getting ideas and getting input, and then then developing something more strategically, which a master plan is, really is a strategic plan. I'll go through the board members if you have anything. Chris?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, actually 3 questions. Going back to your comment regarding, flexibility within some of the areas. So looking at the master plan level 2, for example, in the W2-1 area, you'd be looking that at this level, at this point, you're kind of putting general terms of what you're going to put in there. You've got a design in there right now, but you're looking for flexibility that might change as you get closer in on the design. Is that a correct understanding of that?
Yes. One point to stress here, this is a real project, and, it's going to get built. So it's not an academic exercise, and one of the reasons to make sure that it can get built is to provide some flexibility so it can respond to the market. We think we know where, and DPZ thinks it knows where everything should be, but,
Tenant's going to come to you and say, I want
exactly.
it here. Yeah.
You might find a tenant who says, I want to be over by 93, I want to be in the town center, and that sounds good to me.
So the premise is that for your designated area with the maximas, the W2-1, that's what would be in there, but it could be somewhere in there until you get closer into the...
Yes, the concept
finalized
on the level 2 plan is that within W2-1, the blue, basically those uses could go anywhere within the blue area.
Okay.
The yellow, as I mentioned earlier, stays residential. The sort of middle bluish green is more flexible and more commercial.
Higher densities.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So this is how one way I thought to approach this, and I know it can work, and if we work together to establish the right rules and regulations. And
I think part of the back and forth we're going to need to have over the coming months is to what level and how small do we want to see this level? Do we want to see it as large as it is here, or do we want to see it smaller? Those are the types of back and forth that need to take place over the coming months.
Just as a comment, too, rather than two other questions, but as a comment, I did very much like the way you laid that out of, where there's currently single-family homes, you're planning to put single-family homes, and then, where there's new single-family homes, they may have more higher density thing. It was a nice,
Thank you.
compromise in that. One of the, I know, big question marks was exit 4A. It looks like that area up to exit 4A, above the current Orchards, Pillsbury Road area, that could still be developed without exit 4A necessarily going in. I know a lot hinges on that. Is that, you'd still be looking to develop that area out? It looks like a good design.
the west side is not very heavily dependent on exit 4A at all.
So it's the area over the other side, which would be more, the thing was retail, more on that side, retail and residential?
It's much more heavily commercial.
Okay.
But it is mixed use. There's also residential.
Okay. And then the other comment I had was, there's a fair amount of public here today. I know we're going to have several of these meetings. Just to outreach to all the folks that live in the surrounding areas there, find some way to communicate with them when these are going to be going on, whether that's getting folks emails and just canvassing the community around those areas. If you get the abutters in here and they get to voice their concerns and hear what you're talking about putting in there, it'll lay a lot of fears and, make it a lot smoother, I think.
Certainly. That was part of the purpose of Charette, to try to do additional outreach, because it's just, this process is, this has to be more constrained, by law and rules. So the charrette was basically intended to be a little bit more wide open and just free form and, have folks stop in. And having done, 150, 200 charrettes, it was a pretty good charrette. I think we get some good feedback.
I just know from past experience, John, this is something that I've always hear from John, if you get the abutters in here and you explain what you're doing,
what we always say is the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So we've sat through many hearings in which someone comes up and says, you know what, it's the first time hearing this. You may have been talking about it, but I didn't hear you, or I wasn't contacted. And then what generally happens during that meeting is we just stop and, strongly encourage you to go have a conversation with that person so that we can all move forward. Right. I think what Chris is trying to, articulate is the more proactive you are, one-on-one, we have found that those applicants have been much more productive and successful when they come to the board.
In that regard, Mr. Farrell, we have